Welcome to She's Not Doing So Well. It's a podcast.
I'm Bobby.
I'm Jim.
What is this?
It seemed like it's non-fat, sugar-free, two-pump. My tongue is in my throat, and I cannot.
I'm gonna try to limit the fucks to 10.
Love it.
Honey.
I am.
Honey. I'm just so awkward at this. God. This is another episode of She's Not Doing So Well. I'm Bobby.
I'm Jim.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Make sure you subscribe to our Apple Podcasts.
Make sure you subscribe to whatever it is we're doing here.
Just find us on the fucking internets, okay?
Click, and click 5 stars.
Clickety-clack, clickety-clook.
Click.
I don't know what that is.
A clickety-clook. Clickety-cock.
Clickety-cock. Load it up, honey.
Load it up and shoot it out.
So this episode is going to be brief from us, but we're going to actually hear from other podcasts because we were a part of I act like I don't know what it is. I mean, we created it. So.
Wow. You got mogul moves over there.
But
you're like,
Miz is the host. He took host role and then he ran with it.
Thank God. I mean, thank God, Miz.
You can tell he's bored. He's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and just organize this
Well,
shit.
he's trapped in a closet in supposedly Manhattan, but we all know it's New Jersey.
Yeah, it's definitely Jersey. But yeah, so we decided to do this little round table situation, and well, I'm gonna be honest.
You're never honest.
So I was nervous before this because it's
Oh.
like, okay, so there's Lesbian Chronicles, my Nora T report. Who else? Oh, Ms. Duh, and then Trana. Oh, that was like
Anyone else?
Trana.
Trana.
So we all got into this little Zoom conversation, and I was nervous about this though, like very.
Well, we were both. Like when I came over,
Yeah, we were
I was
like,
like,
well, I was like, do we drink or do we take Klonopins? We're both prescribed. Don't worry. We're not sharing meds, really.
no, we can't legally. Oh no.
No, you can't handle my shit.
Yeah, it's too precious.
We were nervous, so I was like, let's just have drinks. Let's have like a drink. So we had margarita. Did you have one?
I had a canned beverage. I
remember
I
what it
believe
was.
I left one in the freezer and froze it, and it almost popped. But I
Yeah.
also had a canned White Claw, I think.
I think it was a White Claw. You were
Yeah,
taking it easy.
I was trying to
like,
go
I'll have a
slow.
margarita, and then Michael comes around. He's like, "Hey, you should have a shot in it, a vodka." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So, like, what a great idea. So let's go upstairs and talk to some strangers, and I'm gonna be blackout. And by that I mean I was gonna feel good. So we get up here, and we're early because we were like, let's talk to Miz and get it all together.
Which I thought would help, but it actually just made us more nervous.
Well, right, because then we all started drinking fast because he had a margarita and I had. So then I drank through my margarita pretty quick.
You were done before we started
Right.
recording, so you're
So
like,
then-
get me another one quick. I need to wet my whistle.
So so I thought you were just gonna get me some of the the tequila mix or whatever it is.
Oh, I thought you wanted the same drink
Right,
again.
so I didn't know that.
I did a heavy pour Union style.
Union style heavy pour. Literally, I drank all of it within the first like 4 minutes of the episode starting. So it wasn't even our turn yet to talk. And I text Jim and I go, "You're gonna have to speak right now because I can't."
I looked up at your eyes. I was like, oh, is he with me?
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, I'm not here." You know when you get drunk and it's that moment of like,
Oops.
"Oh, yeah," like, "Oh shit, oh shit," and then you're like kind of panicked. You're like a dog in headlights. I was gonna say a deer in headlights.
Oh no!
You're like a deer in headlights.
Just
and
like
you're
a dog in the headlights.
Just
Yep.
like a dog in headlights. That might be the
right
name.
before it gets run over.
Pride edition. It's like a dog in headlights. So I drank that, and then it was our turn to speak. And I'm like, "You're gonna speak," but then of course I spoke first anyway. I was like, "Yeah, I wanted to start this because," and I was it.
I'm just a little boy in the
But
big
I'm like,
city.
"Oh wow, I'm blacking out." I'm looking at Jim. At one point, I lost my shit and started laughing because I couldn't figure out what the fuck I was even doing. Like it was bad.
I looked up and I was like, I had a mask on because we're mask for mask here. And I was like, definitely smiling at the minimum,
And I'm
probably
going-
dying laughing because you were also.
I was dying. I had my mouth.
It was
like,
at an inappropriate moment.
It was.
too.
It was very serious.
It was so inappropriate, but like, it's
Sometimes it happens, and
when
so
Bobby blacks out.
it was like
happens.
laughing at a funeral. I was like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
this is like a serious point."
Which I have laughed at a funeral before with my sister. We were out
Like,
of yep.
mid service.
Mid serve, I had to go to the bathroom because I almost burst out. It's just something funny, and then we looked at each other, and it was like, oh no. Oh no, it's
Don't
like
you hate that?
yeah,
But
when
it's
you
like the
know it's
best
coming.
worst.
Yeah, it's like a good feeling, but you're like, this is so inappropriate.
Yeah, it's like the best feeling in the world, but then you're like, oh shit.
like I'm gonna be
Yeah.
judged heavily.
It was a good interview, and we're gonna play it here shortly. So we're not gonna have news and all of our.
No,
We're not even gonna rant. I mean,
we don't need to rant.
we don't need to rant. This is a good episode because it's our Pride episode. Even though the Pride month has now slipped us away because it's
And-
coming out July 1st.
Oh God!
But it's like a recap of Pride. Like we're gonna have this is like our
Pride in a bundle.
end of Pride. Yeah.
End of Pride.
End of Pride roundtable.
And the good news is we've met new friends because like I didn't.
Yes.
Yeah, before we were planning for this podcast, this specific podcast, this episode, I did not listen to these roundtable people.
Oh, so I had
So then when you sent me the names, it's like, okay, let's see who they are.
right.
But you had been following them, but I had not.
Somewhat, yeah. So Minority I've been following, and I'd listened to I think 1 or 2 episodes, but it's really hard. Like I noticed now that I have a podcast, it's hard for me to listen to podcasts. I don't know why.
Because there's so
I'm like
many.
scared. Well, no, but I'm just scared. I'm gonna. No, there's not.
There's no podcast.
No. So we had questions about Pride. We had questions about like what's happening now in the state of the union.
You're in outer space.
In the state of
I
the
just
union.
looked up in the state
Oh,
of
I
the
am. This
union.
is that. Mhm.
In the state of the union, and you're like, what was I talking about?
Like, the Americas and such.
And the maps.
Some people in America, they don't have maps because they just don't, and like they have to go read to the Iraqs and South Africas, and that's just like a world peace. What, bitch? What?
Oh, honey.
Honey, we talked to them and it was really awesome, and we learned a lot actually. So not surprisingly, but it was like it went really quickly, and I thought it was gonna, like we could keep talking. And I was like, oh, let's keep going, because then of course my buzz is like coming down, but I'm still in that fun phase where I'm not like fully black.
But
But
then
I'm
like a few of them were like, it's been an hour and a half.
I'm like, this has been so fun.
We could go forever.
We could keep going.
Marathon, anyone?
Yeah, it's like, oh,
No.
no.
That was such a good experience. I hope we can do it again. And I really hope we can get together with these people again. And
Agreed.
even just like maybe let's do a couple one-on-ones with some of these podcast groups.
Oh, actually, we could.
The Minorities. I love
Yeah.
that group.
Aunties.
I'm now like following them on Instagram because
Oh yeah, they put up such good
They
information.
have-
They're funny
I
as shit.
know.
Like they are doing it right.
they're doing it right. We need to take some hints.
Right. Like I'm definitely
'Cause
taking hints.
The auntie stories are like extensive.
Wait till my TikToks start coming out. Okay, I'm going viral.
You are amongst the millennials and the Gen Xers, yes. Without further ado,
Without further ado,
clitoral wands.
oh,
Here's
the
the round
round
table.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the first ever LGBTQ plus podcaster roundtable. This was all the first ever, potentially the last one, but we'll see. This was like most great ideas. This was not my idea. This was the She's Not Doing So Well podcast.
Don't point at me, honey.
All them, and then they made me organize it. That's so classic. So I thought we'd start with a little bit of intros because we are a mixed bag, and I think I'll start off by calling on people, and when I call on you, I'd like you to say just a little bit about your podcast, like what the premise is, how long you've been in the game, whatever you want to share, and then why are you so happy to be queer? And I think we can start with Allie and Melissa from the Lesbian.
I knew it.
Hey,
The surprises for breaking up, guys.
exactly. Do
Go ahead.
you want to take it or you want me to take it?
You go ahead.
Okay, so Melissa and I met in a therapy group for women who come out late, like in life. We were both married for a long time to men, and then met in this therapy group and got to be good friends, and then thought of this idea to like do a podcast, because there really is no outlet out there for people who come out after they've been married. I was married 20 years almost.
Wow.
So, and we just felt like we were searching for that when we were coming out. So we started it like a year ago, and just steadily it's picked up steam, and we hear from people all the time in the same situation. So it's just kind of keeps gaining. And then why am I happy to be queer? I think because I waited forever to do it. And so now it's like a carnival every day.
That's a great way to put it.
Awesome.
A carnival.
Right.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's the same for me with just being able to finally be out, even though I wasn't really what I would call closeted because I didn't realize I was gay. But once that realization hit me and like everything made sense in my life, I was just super excited to finally be able to be free and realize why I didn't fit in with the straight crowd. So.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Trina, how about you?
Hello, I'm Trina. I co-host a podcast called Chosen Family with my sort of creative partner in comedy soulmate, Thomas LeBlanc. And the show, it's a talk show. We've had some really amazing guests, including my comedy hero, Margaret Cho, that we had on last season.
I love her.
I know, it was like such a dream come true moment. And our show is really about talking to artists and sort of, I think as the show has evolved and as we've continued to do it, we just wrapped up our second season a little while ago and we just came out with a Pride bonus episode. And I think now that we've done like 30 episodes, I think what's sort of starting to take shape is that this talk show is really about understanding the connection between healing trauma and the creative process and how those two things come together.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And Trina, why are you so happy to be queer?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Are we?
Not go off script.
I'm so happy that I'm queer because I think it would be so boring to be straight. I like whenever I talk to like a straight cisgender guy, like one of the first questions that I always ask is like, what do you guys talk about? Like it just seems so boring. So that's why I'm happy to be queer. And I think it gives me access, being queer gives me access to the coolest and the most fun and the most creative and insightful people. And I think that's makes me the most happy.
100%.
Complete agreement. All right, aunties. You're up.
Hey. I'm Auntie Carell, and that's Auntie Dewan. And we're two of the three hosts of a Minority Report. We've done it a little over a year now. We just recorded episode 72 last night.
Wow.
So, so started just because we really didn't see an outlet, just similar to a lot of you guys, an outlet of specifically people of color that are queer and gay within the community. And if so, it was always this stereotype of us. And we really wanted to show that there's a spectrum of being a person of color that is gay, that happens to be gay, happens to be queer, whatever it may be. And so honestly, it's turned into almost like I had therapy sessions over the years, talking about anything from Black Lives Matter to Black Trans Lives Matter to Beyonce to Janet Jackson. You know, it's honestly been our weekly therapy session. So I don't know, Joanne, what else do you want to add?
I think it's just an opportunity for us to highlight the diversity within our own community. And we talk about how important it is for representation at wherever you are, whether it's in the workplace, in your relationship, or, you know, in the community. And having those voices at the table is really important. For Pride Month, we normally don't have guests, but we invited guests in from other parts of the queer community, specifically to give voice to those parts of the community that we are not a part of. We're gay men, we're all in interracial relationships, but we have a unique point of view. And so we wanted to invite other voices in to be able to talk about things that are important to our community. So, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
And thank you for inviting us on. We're happy to be here.
I guess I'll say why I'm happy to be queer.
Oh, yeah.
I think, and then I'll go over to Carell and he can share. For me, I think I'm so happy being queer because.
Oh no, did she freeze on us?
Oh, she's not happy.
Did I freeze? Am I good? What happened?
You're back.
You're back. Okay, I have no idea what happened. Okay, sorry. So why I'm happy to be queer, I think for me, it's about, like a lot of us, it's a journey of acceptance. And there's the internal things that happen in terms of recognizing who you are, what you believe, and what's important for you and how you want to live. And then I think outwardly, especially now, you start, at least I start to recognize how important it is to accept others for who and what and where they are in their journey. And that's a beautiful byproduct of just being queer, because I did the work myself. I'm doing the work myself, and it's allowing me to be able to extend that to other people and their lifestyles.
Oh, girl, you nailed it.
I
can't say it better. I mean,
great.
I love being queer just because it's allowed me to be me. Simply that. Like the freedom to finally just be like, I don't have to pretend for anyone. I don't have to, and it's just fun. And why be straight? It's way more fun being queer and gay.
Girl.
Agreed.
See.
All right, well, thank you. And then the She's Not Doing So Well podcast. You can burden us with your story.
We're just two twinks living in Columbus, Ohio. No, I think we started the podcast. I came with the idea because I just wanted to bring humor to serious situations and try to talk about it and get people talking through humor and using humor. And so that's why I started the podcast personally. I don't know, Jim, you joined on.
I joined on because you kind of just dragged me along in.
True.
I mean, to be completely honest. And then we've been having so much fun talking to everyone.
Yeah.
Like we try to have a guest and try to have a topic, but then sometimes it's just us ranting, and we need that in our lives because you need to rant every once in a while.
It is like therapy.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. It's been a while. Why are you happy to be queer? By the way, I'm sitting across from Bobby, in case you're wondering.
Why you have a mask on.
Why I have a mask on. Why I keep looking up over the camera as if I'm staring off into space. He's actually right there, so.
And we couldn't hide my beautiful face, so that's why I wear the mask.
Why are you happy to be queer?
Just because I can be myself. It sounds like everybody kind of has that same tone. I mean, just being able to like be yourself finally when you come out and you're finally able to be yourself. It's amazing. You're alive, and that's it. I mean, being able to be myself.
Yeah, I would have to second that. I feel like I was told I was gay before I knew I was gay, just because I'm more femme. And so it was kind of like when I finally, like decades in, was like, you know what? No, I actually am what they've been making fun of me for being all this time. Maybe it's a good thing, and maybe it's great. And yeah, and then Trina hit the nail on the head with the community aspect. Like, I love our community. It's so much fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys. We're gonna jump into the questions.
Are you happy you're queer?
Yeah, wait a second.
Is she gonna add hers in post-production? What's going on here?
The Miz has not spoken.
My podcast is called Miz the Podcast. It's an open forum for the collective miseries of the human experience. So it's like not like overtly an LGBTQ plus podcast, but the host just happens to be like really gay. But that's really like the premise of the podcast, is just like me, like when you say ranting, like that's all I do is I just bought this like a week ago. Like I usually just scream into my about shit I hate. And why I'm so happy to be queer is probably just because I love dick. But we can jump right into the question.
Aren't the lesbians laughing?
They get it. They get it.
We had opposite problems.
Opposite problems. Yeah, exactly. So basically, I took all your questions, and I think we're going to do it like this. We're going to ask the question. We're going to call on one group, right? And then after that group, like whoever wants to jump in and add, please do so. Because this isn't just me like calling on people, because like no one wants to hear that. So without further ado, I think the first question we're going to discuss was, how much does Pride Month suck right now given COVID? And how have you been able to salvage like any sort of celebration, any sort of festivities? I mean, like I'm personally like relieved because I don't have to take off my shirt. But like, the rest of you, like, what do you guys think about COVID in the current environment? And the submitter, Bobby and Jim, can go ahead and take the first stab here.
Oh Lord.
Great. Do you
Well,
want me
we
to
did
start?
Come through Columbus.
Yeah, come through Columbus.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this on the last episode because I think going into COVID and realizing the shutdown was going to last for a while, and then our Pride probably got pushed back in April.
Yeah.
Maybe about then. I think we were upset. And then kind of as the months have gone on and we've seen protests take over the streets, we've been encouraged by that. And we kind of go back to, I think we were saying last week, like Pride is a riot. And so what we're seeing now is kind of similar to past Prides, where you have a little bit less corporate Pride and more in the streets, organic marches. And so it's sad that we don't get to hang out and go get drunk and sweat through our shirts at 93 degrees, or take them off if you want.
Yes.
But we're kind of just like looking around the country saying, I think what we're going through is a good thing. And this is still Pride Month.
This
for
is
us.
Pride.
This is Pride. Yeah.
I think Jim said it the best. I mean, we had a little shindig last weekend when it was supposed to be Pride. I had people over, socially distanced, like everybody was hanging out in the backyard, where they're like rainbow stuff, and we kind of just celebrated that way, sort of together with close friends. But yeah, Jim nailed it on the head as far as just being out there and actually getting dirty and really, it's not as corporate. Like the corporate thing to me actually really bothers me because it just seems so, I don't want to say fake.
Kind of ignores the history.
Yeah, but it's like, it's not a real riot. I mean, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say, honestly. I don't like the corporate environment.
I think like,
we love a party. We do love a party. We're not going to.
Oh no, I'm not going to say no to it.
Right, like you can find.
I miss seeing everyone. It's just different. It's a different time. Yeah.
Now, Melissa and Allie, I hear you guys are doing this thing called Dykes on Bikes to celebrate.
Oh, we are not bikers.
No. Elaborate on.
We're close with the president of Dykes on Bikes Atlanta.
Oh my God.
And they're doing an event this Sunday where they're riding around to different like LGBTQ businesses and doing like stop offs for like photo ops and to post to social media. And so we've got a little mini Pride that we're going to do on Sunday. We're going to set up at a park in Kirkwood, a neighborhood in Atlanta. And they're going to stop by and we're going to do some photos with them, socially distant, of course. Right. But yeah, so we're kind of trying to find alternatives. I'm the one that likes to go out. I think Allie might be a little happy that Pride's raging this year.
I like to be home by 11 o'clock. I'm kind of late.
And I'll stay out until 3 a.m.
Is anyone local to Atlanta or no one?
Right.
Well in the house.
Yeah, where do you live in Atlanta?
East Atlanta Village area.
You're right near us.
Yeah, once you said Kirkwood, I was like,
yeah.
Let me just mosey on up there.
You should come.
Definitely.
I
might have to pop in there.
Yeah.
Have my mask on.
Right.
Awesome. We would love it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Is it on social media and everything right now? I can look it up.
Yeah, it's on our Instagram.
Perfect.
Lesbian Chronicles. So yeah, check it out.
Will do.
For sure.
Trina, how about you? What's Pride going on in Montreal remotely?
I mean, I really agree with Jim. Like, I don't think this is a bad thing. You know, like I think that Pride is really returning to its roots as a protest. And I think, you know, something that we've seen over the years, and I think it's related to the sort of corporatization of Pride, is that there's been sort of this dismissal of, you know, especially like trans Black women. And it's like somewhere along the road, we forgot how this all started and who started it, you know? And it's like,
yes.
I think this return is so powerful and so meaningful. And it might not be the Pride that we were expecting, but I really feel like it's the Pride that we've needed for a long time. It's really overdue. I just wish that we could get together to really do this. You know, like yes. I feel, even with the protests, it's like, it's even beyond that. Like, I wish that we could actually get together to organize and and feel more of that connectivity. I think that's the part, that for me, I feel like I'm missing. And I think for me, like just as a performer in general, like I have no idea when the next time is that I'm going to get to go on stage. So for me, it's beyond pride. And for me, like the best thing about performing has always been just about that connection, like with an audience, and like nothing replaces that. Like, I know a lot of people are doing Zoom shows, and I've done a few Zoom shows, and they're great in their own way, but it just does not replace that magic of being together.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
All right, aunties, how about you?
We just talked about this last night when we recorded.
We did. We've kind of just migrated that energy to the Black Lives Matter movement, to the protests, to the riots. And like you said, like literally our civil liberties as gay people, queer people, started with riots. And now here's a subset of the community that really needs the entire LGBTQIA plus community to rally around us, honestly. And it's been awesome to see a lot of folks do that. So yes, everybody loves a nice little kiki on, drinking and everything like that. But this is reality, and we need to deal with reality the best way we know how. So yeah, you guys nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think the interplay between Pride and all the Black Lives Matter ramp up now is particularly interesting. And like you say, it's not the Pride that we're used to, but it's the Pride that we like desperately need. So very well said, everyone. Leading into our next question, we had a question on the views of the group on comedy that's based in stereotypes that can be sexual, racial, any other intersection of identity, and when is it appropriate? When is it inappropriate? Are you someone who likes that kind of comedy? Are you against that kind of comedy? And none other than Trano and Tor can begin our discussion.
I mean, not on the same level, of course, but right now, like, there's also this discussion, particularly on Twitter, of female comedians coming forward about their experiences in this world. I've been doing comedy for 7 years, and it is still very much a white boys club, and it's so hard to articulate what a strange world comedy is. Like, I don't even know how to unpack it in just sort of one question or an answer to a question. I think for me personally, like, I've always been against comedy that sort of punches down, and there are hate speech laws for a reason. You can't dehumanize people. And I think like that's really where the line is, like when something becomes dehumanizing. And what I find sort of hilarious in particular with, I would say like 40-year-old plus straight white male comedians is that they think they're above it. They think that comedy gives them this like pass to just say everything. And I know that free speech is very tricky. I know that we don't want to start, limiting free speech, but I think there's a difference between free speech and hate speech. And I think minorities, especially of whatever group, we recognize that line. To us, I think that line is usually pretty clear. But to me, it's really like when things start to get dehumanizing that it's just like, no.
I completely agree. I've been in comedy way fewer years than you. I'm not even a year in. And I've seen like what you're talking about, like at the shows, like all the 40 plus white guys make like a,
right.
Oh, the gays could never get straight A's. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
But I think also like, I know for me, like, I think that the things that I do on stage are very carefully considered, like for me, performing is really about bringing people together. I never want to do or say anything that's going to hurt someone. But I think at the same time, like, you can't cover all bases all the time and you can't please everyone. Like, even though I'm a trans person, like it doesn't happen very often. I think it's only happened twice, and that's why these moments stick with me. But like, based on some material that I've done, and I still don't fully understand it, but like someone in the past called me transphobic, which I think was because of my Caitlyn Jenner jokes. But like, you know, sometimes sometimes you just can't win, no matter what you do, and so it's tricky.
It's tricky. It really.
There is a line.
The important thing is just like really trusting in your process and knowing where you're coming from and what your intentions are. And then, you know, and to remain open. Like, I think that whenever I do receive whatever kind of criticism, like if it's, you know, if the criticism is coming from like a genuine place, like I'm open to hearing it. I want to know, like, you know, what it was about what I said that didn't work for that particular person. And sometimes, you know, there's this growth that happens from those kind of conversations that I think most comedians are sort of like closed off to. It's like, shut the fuck up. I know what I'm saying. I know what I mean. But I personally don't want to like close off that sort of dialogue from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Melissa, Allie, any thoughts?
You know, I haven't done stand-up. I have taken a stand-up class just recently and I'm hoping to give it a shot soon. But it's interesting because we do kind of get some comments back on some of the things that we say on our podcast. Like, we don't edit, you know, and we don't really plan what we're going to say. And sometimes maybe we say something that someone finds offensive. And so we'll acknowledge it.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of the time it's, I mean, we haven't had anything like that horrible that was said, you know, that we had to like issue an apology for.
Right.
But yeah, you know, some people say that we're a little too lighthearted about coming out later because it is such a difficult thing. You're giving up, you know, everything stable in your life in order to come out. And it's sad and it sucks and it's a difficult process. And we kind of make light of that process a lot. And a lot of people have kind of fired back at us for that. But it's like, you've got to freaking laugh at some point.
I mean, I think there's some level of just like people love to pick apart what you're saying. Like people love to do that. So like just there's some criticism that you're like, okay, yes, it's valuable. I can use this to better my work. There's some where you're like, okay, like where like it's just a whole big exercise of drawing a line, which it's never been.
I mean, that's our whole podcast.
Oh no.
I mean, we like to ride that line and kind of make things funny, but then also swoop in with some compassion behind it. And I think, like Trina said, like if your heart's there, the people listening will know that.
Right.
Yeah, sort of.
And sense of humor is so personalized, you know, and I struggle a lot with comedy because there are certain comedians that are out there that, you know, that have been, you know, disrespectful to several marginalized communities, and unapologetic about it. And I think for me, a lot of it has to do with kind of the intellectual component of their comedy. You know, there are some comedians that are out there that are writing jokes and telling jokes just to get the laugh, right? And sometimes getting the laugh is at the expense of these marginalized communities. And there are others that are much more intellectual about how they put together their set and the message that they want to tell and the thoughts and the feelings that they want to evoke through telling their either stories or jokes or whatever. And I find much more satisfaction in some of that kind of a style versus someone that's willing to tell a joke at the expense of whomever gets hurt by it. And then there's like this whole other spectrum that you guys have been talking about in terms of people just get offended differently. And so you can say the thing that you think is the most PC, the most correct, the most non-offensive, and someone will take offense to that. Oh, you didn't go far enough.
Right.
You know? So it's like, how do you strike the balance?
Yeah, I think it's completely up to comedic preference, to be honest. Like I personally, like I love self-deprecation. So if you're a gay person who's gonna make gay jokes because it's like your view of self-deprecation, I think that's like hilarious. Like that goes for really any other stereotype, to be honest. Like it's when it's at the expense of someone who isn't you that it becomes like not funny, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you would hope that person, whatever joke they're making, at least experienced it or has a toe into that community. Like I think for me, it's just like whenever they're making fun of something and you haven't even like been around the gay community, you haven't even been around Black folks. So like, how are you making a joke? Like it's like you don't have any prior knowledge of it. So that's when I kind of am like, okay, you suck.
You're not genuine.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think too, like sometimes the danger in that, like for when you're just going for the shock value, like you might be an intelligent comedian. You might understand that you don't really mean it. But then you have this audience of bigoted people who see you doing that joke as permission.
Yeah.
They see it as permission to sort of act that way in their own lives. And I think like often that's the problem, is that it's not necessarily specifically what's being said, but it's sort of the effect that comes after. And people who leave watching that feeling empowered to live out that hatefulness, you know, in their everyday lives. I think that's the part of it that I like, you know, even with J.K. Rowling and that whole thing, it's like, you know, I genuinely believe that she doesn't want to hurt trans people, but she is presenting these like outrageously false arguments. And she's still an influential person. There are still people who are going to read this, who take this as this, who take it as fact, who act on it. You know, I think that's the problem a lot of the times.
Yeah, no, that, and that's like time and time again too. Like, as an influencer, as someone who's like, no, not me.
Oh,
I was like, let me look at her.
Let's not go too far on it.
She has.
Yeah.
Like, as someone in the position of influence, you have to be extra careful because people are going to misconstrue your messages. Even when you have different intentions, A, they might take your intentions as B, C, or D, and then it's completely gets out of hand.
And hopefully you're open to, even if your intent was pure, to still learning, because they might actually have something that you need to grow from that you don't even know, you know?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you all for the huge laugh at me being an influencer.
You're welcome.
You're a true comedian.
Talking about self-deprecation.
Yep.
So the next question that we wanted to ask was submitted by the Minority Podcast. And we wanted to, and I think this is like so particularly relevant right now in this world we're living in, but how does one address the notion of completely optional allyship? Like, you're there, you're in it, quote unquote, from Instagram, from Twitter, but then like when push comes to shove, what are you doing? Like what are you sticking your neck out on? Like, how are you actually driving change and living true to that? So I wanted to give you guys the floor and just kind of give your thoughts on how are you guys addressing it, and like what should the rest of the world be thinking of? And
oh man, it's a loaded
Take it
question,
away.
honestly. Because I mean, for me, I've been like Mr. Twitter hands, like, I'm getting everybody, I'm educating everyone. But especially being in an interracial relationship, like my husband's half Greek, half Lebanese, so even that's a whole kind of crazy dynamic. Where hey, and he's hot now.
You need to box on it.
I've had some margaritas. So.
Yeah, no, hey, I'll show you his picture later. But it's just been interesting, just the dynamic of some of his relatives and family members and cousins and people he's grown up with, where they might say things here, but right when the heat gets too hot, they'll either delete the tweet or delete the post and things like that, and it just causes this kind of ruffle. And honestly, I've been asking people, because it's just like, I don't want to overreact, but your feelings get hurt, because it's just like, I thought you were an ally, I thought you were on my side, but now I'm hurt because now the heat got too hot for you and you're stepping away. And that's the time where you really need to push the pedal to the metal, honestly. So as much as it's an education of trying to educate our like white friends and things like that, of just like our experience, I'm also trying to learn, okay, why are you backing away? What's causing you to feel that way? And things like that as well. And then trying to learn it as an educational experience for me. That way I could tell people, oh, this is how you can be a better ally, or this is what so-and-so said to be a better ally, because they're in a similar situation. But I think we all just need to be open and willing to have those uncomfortable conversations. And it's going to get hot. It's not going to be easy at all. And if you kind of go into that knowing that hey, it's going to be uneasy, you might sweat a little bit, but on the other side of it, we're both going to grow from this, and hopefully we like better the world out of this situation. So go on.
I struggle a little bit with this kind of pseudo allyship because we see it in the gay community, and I think one of the challenges that that comes as a result of where we're in right now is we don't have as many distractions. You know, so we're all sitting at home in our own houses for the most part. You know, we're not going to the office. We're not attending concerts. We're not going on vacation, the majority of us, you know, so we literally have to sit with it. And so as someone who's part of the Black community, and then also someone who's part of the LGBTQ plus community, you know, I'm looking at this from two different lenses of one, you know, like there's the personal feelings that I have about how I feel within the situation that I'm trying to deal with. And then I'm also seeing all of my other colleagues and friends and family members and seeing how they're kind of responding or who's not responding.
That part.
Like, and it's so complex to kind of navigate like the internal, the external. And then when you layer on like who's like being a real ally and then who's being like an ally for the gram, like
an Instagram ally.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm gonna put my blackout square for the day, but then I'm gonna go back to posting like my tits and my ass on you know my Twitter account because you know that's what my feed is all about, you know, and I need to feed my brand. It's so hard, and I think for me it's just, you know, I'm trying to recognize that we're all learning, you know, like in our lifetimes we have not experienced this, you know, the concentration of, you know, a zeroed in focus on trans lives and Black lives exclusively, without all of these other things, and the realization that people are on different journeys. So, you know, we had this conversation, we've been having this conversation on our podcast, and I don't know that there's like the right answer, but I do feel very confident in the fact that my role is to understand what I believe and to have compassion for people that are at least demonstrating an action of growing. And they might not have the right words, or they might not have any words. And it's like, how can I, when I'm ready to, reach out, and how can I be a point of conversation and a safe haven to have good offline conversations, not on Twitter, not on Facebook, not on Instagram about this, but like, if I care about you, let's pick up our phones, let's have a conversation, let's talk this thing through so that, you know, we're not misinterpreting each other's actions. Because I think that's the big danger.
Yeah,
like, yes, there are people that are on yes, there are people that are on the far end that are like totally not for the movement. But like, then there are people that are really struggling with, how do I show my support? How do I educate myself? How do I say the right thing without putting a foot in my mouth and getting canceled? And can I lean on the people that are being marginalized to educate me? That's tough.
Yeah. I agree with both of you. I feel like I was telling Bobby, sorry, this is Jim if you can't see my mouth moving, but like,
Jim, what did we talk about?
Okay. So when my family had like a little get together, and this was at the beginning of some of the protests, and I was trying to tell the difference between people who I could have a conversation with and people I knew I couldn't get to, especially at a cookout with 30 people. But, you know, we have to have those hard conversations. It's like, I'm trying to explain to my grandma why the phrase all lives matter is offensive at this time and actually ridiculous. And it's not that all lives don't matter. It's just that right now, Black Lives Matter, we need to raise that up because we need to be speaking about that. And she's like, okay, so you're not saying that all lives don't matter. I'm like, no. And then, you know, some of my aunts and uncles too were like, well, just unannounced, well, I just disagree with all this looting. And it's like, okay, well, have you ever thought that most of the protesters are peaceful and most people aren't looting, and that maybe the looters aren't even part of the protest movement, and maybe they're their own agents, right? Like, we have videos of this stuff, so it's like, okay, well, a lot of the looters aren't part of the Black Lives Matter movement, but you know, it's just like, it's a complex conversation and it's ongoing. And then some of my family will reach out to me even after this, since this cookout, we've continued the conversation. So I think it's hard and it takes time, but there are people who want to learn and want to grow. So just trying to recognize those people and who they are.
Yeah.
I think we also forget that we're not taught how to handle these situations.
Oh.
We're figuring it out, like right
Yeah.
now,
Yes.
all of us in our own ways. Like we didn't go through a class on how to handle these
No.
multi-complex communication between different social economic groups or whatever that are being marginalized and treated like so unjustly. So we're all figuring it out, and that's the complexity of it. That's the frustration of it, but that's also the beautiful part of it because we are figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the looting, I'm like, we can't just fight for this like on convenient terms. Like things are gonna like be byproducts of this that we.
Right.
That's a cost that like me I should be willing to eat to be able to fight for this and be able to get out there and demonstrate things. Like I'm reading this book. I signed up to get it. I'm reading this book called Good White People and the whole
Funny.
premise of this book is that everyone's quote unquote fight and actions to anti-racism in the past have been more of just a distancing mechanism from those who they want to blame it on. Like,
Ooh.
how could I like ever like condone a slave owner? How could I ever like relate to the white trash population of America who are the real racists? It's like that's not the escape out of this. It's the becoming aware and taking action. And I think the main point of like this whole experience is like it should not be a pleasant experience for white people to understand what this is about. Like you should feel uncomfortable, you should feel in pain, you should feel embarrassed, and like that's like what you have to sign on for. Like you can't expect this to be something that you enjoy. It's something that needs to be done, and you should feel not on the spectrum of emotions now. Like it's not like a positive experience. And
there is a paradigm shift that's happened right now, because previous conversations were kind of like about like white guilt and like that kind of things. And the conversation that we're having now, not just with like the Black Lives Matter movement, but also within Trans Lives Matters and other like marginalized communities, it's about systemic policies that are written to disproportionately disadvantage the lives and the experience for marginalized communities and promote and provide more of an advantage for white cisgendered, straight males in our community. And so I think the conversation has shifted away from like, oh, you're white, you're bad, or oh, you're straight, you're bad. No, it's like, we're not even talking about you. We're talking about the policy, the fact that this policy that is in place about my adoption or my ability to have children or my ability to grow my generational wealth or my ability to vote, like these are systemic things that we need action against. It's no longer about you, Joe Public. It's about the policies that are in place that keep us, enshackled and in the shadows that allow us not to thrive.
You preaching tonight, Devon. Come on, girl. Yes.
Love it.
We had a prep. We talked last night, so.
Yeah, no, just on the policy thing, I think it's also like when you as a white person are faced with that policy, are you going to make the decision to benefit from that policy, or are you going to fight for maybe your detriment, but for the greater good? And I think that's like something that a lot of white people, myself included, need to like sit back and really think about. Like, I'm lived my whole life benefiting from policies that favored me and got me to my corporate job where I am today. And like, could there have been steps along the way where I could have been like, this doesn't seem right, I'm benefiting, but like, I was blind to it.
Trina, what's it like up in Canada? Like, what's the conversation? And I know there's maybe a larger percentage of Indigenous population. What's going on up there?
Yeah, I mean, the conversation is happening here too in a major way as well. We've always been so, just based on our proximity to the United States, just so entrenched in American culture. And I think that for a long time, for Canadians, there was this idea that like, oh, it's not as bad here. And so it was that idea of that pass, like that idea of like, well, since it's not as bad here, then we don't really have to deal with it here, or we can just sort of brush it aside, And so it's been many, many years of sweeping these issues under the rug in Canada. And, you know, it's come to a head here as well. And I think, you know, like in the United States, it's so overdue. Like, this is a moment. I think what's easy to forget sometimes is that, and I agree with everything that's been said so far, and it's been so like beautifully, articulately said. It is a challenging time. It is this time of discomfort. Like, Corel, like you said, like, get ready to be uncomfortable. Get ready to have these uncomfortable conversations. But like, I find that like this is also really exciting. Like, this is also a time and a window into real fundamental, getting to the roots, change once and for fucking all. Like,
Right.
this should be inspiring. And as difficult as it is, like, there is the potential for something so incredible on the other side of this that extends to so many things. Like, Dewan, you were talking about policy, and I think that it also ties into the idea of capitalism, which is so entrenched with white supremacy. You know, like, white supremacy is designed to protect capitalism and keep people down and keep all of us like fighting amongst each other,
Right.
you know? So I'm trying to really focus on how this is exciting and how this is inspiring. I find that's what gets me through the difficult moments. Like, that's what gets me through the uncomfortable feelings, the uncomfortable conversations, is that at the end of the day, this is fucking exciting. Like,
It's cool, and it's cool to see the tangible like changes already.
Yes,
like,
already. Exactly.
This quickly,
Exactly.
sticking to like what you really believe in is tangible. Like, you
Exactly.
see it day in, day out. So it's just like, oh man, that keeps momentum. Right when you're like almost like defeated and tired and angry.
And tears.
But seriously, something shifts and you're like, that's what I'm doing this for.
It's
finally being heard and understood.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the pandemic, so like in, you know, mid-March, in that first week of like sort of chaos and everything falling apart and being so like just confused and scared and like just your future sort of evaporating, I was feeling like, oh my God, like this could really be a moment of change. So like, for example, in Canada, we've had much more government assistance than in the US. So
shocked.
we have, so like, whereas you guys got like one $1,200 check, like Canada has this emergency benefit fund where people have been getting like $2,000 a month, basically, for up to 4 months. But like, for me, what was exciting about that is that like, well, why isn't this always the case? Like, we have the resources to establish universal basic income. Like, why? And this pandemic is opening up the door to that. And then I felt like as time went on, I was like, okay, the pandemic is not the change that I thought it was going to be. Everyone was reverting so quickly back to the old ways, the old paradigms. And then this happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we are on the course for change, you know? And it feels like all of these elements are coming together, because if the pandemic hadn't happened, I don't know if we would have been galvanized in this way. And Dewan, I think you were talking about how we're all focused so clearly on this right now because there's nothing else.
Right.
And that's what we needed. So it's really interesting to see all of these elements come together, and it's up to us to not lose that momentum, to really like, you know, to me, that's sort of the message that I'm trying to push through to people is like, this is a commitment. You know?
Wow. Very, very, very well said, everyone. I think we're gonna get back to this topic in a way, but in the meantime, I just wanted to ask the question: is it true that lesbians and gays don't get along?
Oh, I was wondering that.
I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me it's straight.
I don't think that's true at all. I haven't encountered
that though many times.
Yeah. But I think there's almost like, just like this feeling that you don't have anything in common. But really,
you have a huge thing.
You have a lot. Yeah. It's like kind of like when we've had like lesbian gatherings and stuff. We're all standing there and we're like, none of us have anything in common. We don't work together.
Right.
We don't have the same interest. It's just that we're all gay, and that's where we're all in the same room. And I think that that's like a good way for like gay men and lesbians to look at it. You know, like we have this common theme, and we should bond on that. And I really think that kind of like it could make the community even more powerful if more people recognize that.
It's true.
Right. Bigger group.
I don't hate gay men. I love them.
I just feel like lesbians
glad.
sometimes, the lesbians here in Columbus are like kind of rigid and hard to approach.
I don't like them.
Not to be rude,
I
but I'm
agree.
like,
Are those kind of lesbians and they're terrifying. I think that's why for one reason
okay.
for a long time, I wasn't gay. So I was like, I'm not like that.
Oh,
Yes.
Bobby.
I
I
mean,
think there's
it's true.
also plenty of gay men I know that are like annoying and I hate.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying.
Oh, yeah. You walk into our local watering hole and it's like
For example, Jim.
stairs. Oh,
Yeah.
There's-
Yeah.
Queen.
please. I like run up to you. I'm just like a puppy.
It's like I wonder where that even started at, you know?
You know what's like?
Yeah.
I mean, I could speak to it because she's been around the block a few.
Okay, mama.
I mean, and I'm probably one of the oldest ones on the call, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that as queer people, just using that term generically, you struggle so hard to find people that are like you. And I think if I think about my own journey and coming out, like I wanted nothing more than to find other gay men that I could like just surround myself with and really create a community. And I didn't see, trans individuals and lesbians and non-binary and, anything else as part of like what I would consider like at that point in time, at that stage of my development, as part of my community, even though we said broadly LGBT, and the Q plus wasn't even invented yet at that point.
Right.
So I feel like there is obviously some history with this difference between gays, lesbians, trans, drag queens, and others, where today, I think because we are fortunate enough that we fought so much to be at the seat of the table, as I use a Pose quote, but we fought to be at the seat of the table, that we see more visibility of the broader spectrum of our community, right? And so I think for a lot of us, we are much more open to having connections with people that are not necessarily like, a femme gay man connecting with a masculine presenting female lesbian, whereas before there might have been like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with anything that's like masculine or playing sports or playing or whatever, these stereotypes, because my narrow view of what that is means it's straight acting and I'm gay. And I think now we're having different conversations, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
I think sometimes there's also this illusion that we are just like this perfectly unified community, and we're not, and I think like, I agree with so much of what you said, Duan, and I think too, it's like, I mean, there are differences in our experiences, like even when you look at like the trans inclusion in the community, it's like, and as we all know, fundamentally, there's a difference between gender and sexuality, and so it's like, we do all have, different experiences, but I think that like, I definitely see like the lines of communication becoming more open. I know that I think like something that I've picked up in the trans community, and I have to admit, like sometimes I think, maybe not that I've felt it, but I've definitely thought about it. Sometimes like when you look at the way that in the last 10 years or so, like especially in metropolitan areas or big cities where like gay, in particular white gay cisgender males have sort of ascended to the same level of privilege as like straight white males. And there's been this sort of abandonment of like the rest of the community. I just recently watched the Marsha P. Johnson documentary on Netflix, which I highly recommend to everyone. It's really essential. It's hard to watch. Like I felt like, especially as a trans person, like watching so much like violence against trans people is very intense. But there's, to me, one of the most heartbreaking scenes is there's this trans activist named Sylvia Rivera, who is talking to, this is like in 1973, and she's talking to this crowd of cis gay men largely. And she's like, you know, you've all
I've
turned
seen
your
this
back
video.
on me. Like, I
getting
have
booed.
devoted my life to gay rights and gay protection, and you've turned your back on me and you're not listening to me, and you've just put me aside. So I think that, like, you know, we have the LGBTQ plus community has a complicated history, you know, and it's not this like perfectly unified group, but I really do believe that we can get there. And I think that, like, now is proof that we really need to get there. Like, we need each other.
I like 100% agree with that. And I think that one thing with like coming out, there's like degrees of difficulty for coming out.
Yeah.
You know, for me to come out as a lesbian woman when I was 38 years old was pretty easily accepted by most people. But for someone like a trans Black man, that's not going to be easy at all. Like, that's a million times harder.
Right.
So I think that there's, you know, I think it's important for people like myself who had an easy time to recognize that. Not an easy time, but you know what I mean?
Right.
To recognize that, and to also recognize the fight that other people have done ahead of us. I didn't submit my questions, Anthony. I thought we were going to spring them on during this, but one of the things—
Bring them on. I'm known
the gatekeeping in the lesbian community. A lot of times we get questioned, like, or not taken seriously because we haven't come out sooner. And I don't know if you guys encounter that or have felt that way with any men who've come out later.
Completely different. It's a celebration for anybody that comes out like late in life.
It's almost like a finally.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like a wait, you're not already out type deal.
My friend did.
Like, you knew.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it was 5 years ago.
Not to like take a complete turn, but you know, we might take a little bit of a left. I think sex and accessibility to sexual information through, like, you know, porn has been a great educator, because I think when a lot of, you know, like, and I can't speak as a lesbian, I'd be curious what your thoughts are, but as a gay man, I find that my openness to other sexual activities, like, and watching, and what I find attractive and sexually—
What you watching, girl? What you watching?
Or, you know, it's a spectrum now.
Come on. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, let me show you my porn
As the
history.
moderator of this roundtable, on that.
We'll send you some clips.
Right.
My inbox is wide open.
Wow. She'll fill it up, girl.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, it's a party now. But no, I know this was a whole left, but the point in bringing that up is, I think that there are some kind of like preconceived ideas, like in terms of like sexual attraction between, like, you know, gay men specifically and lesbian women, in terms of like just their sexual organs. Like, oh, there was this whole thing of like, oh, if you're a gay man and someone talks about like women having sex or women's sexual body parts, it's like, oh, you know, like there was like a kind of reaction, you know. And we watched, I know Carell and I, and maybe you guys have watched the new documentary called Disclosure, that's by Laverne Cox on Netflix. And they also talk about, you know, how, you know, exposure to, you know, trans women in a sexual context kind of has taken on this kind of like visceral reaction or whatever. But I think because, at least in my experience, because we have access to so much information, you know, when I be getting out there doing my little, you know, porn stuff, I flip-flop between all of the, like, the spectrum becomes, it's less focused on one thing, because I think sexuality and personal growth has like grown beyond just like this narrow focus of it has to be this, like, oh, I have to be interested in this and I can't see beyond that. And I think that also plays into like the relationships we have with other people that are not part of our world. So like, if you can imagine someone, and I hate to put in this context, it's not about objectifying, but like, if you can find someone sexually attractive that is a certain level of intimacy that allows you to be able to have a certain other kind of intimacy in a relationship way, that might be like, oh, I now have, instead of all gay friends, I now have a spectrum of friends that are, well beyond my reach because I've now have been more educated, I'm more open to it, and I don't see it as a this or that, but it's a this and that.
Right.
I've never heard that gatekeeper terminology, honestly. Like, and it might just simply be that I was just still so worried about me coming out and myself and trying to, that I didn't even notice that they were trying to gatekeep me. I don't know. So that's kind of
Here I am, honey.
It's like, hey, I'm ready, boys. But that's an interesting aspect, and I don't know if it is because it was later in life that you came out that they're like, okay, are you sure? Are you sure you're gonna go running away?
Right.
Huh? How did you answer that? Like, what was your response?
Oh, my response is always, I mean, I haven't been approached with this that many, I think maybe once or twice, but I gave up everything in my life. I wouldn't have done all the things that I've done if I didn't genuinely mean this.
Right.
So, like, I gave up a marriage of 11 years. I've given up time with my kids. Financially, I've lost out. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's a choice, so.
Right.
Oh, that was humor. I was like,
that was funny.
No. I was like,
funny.
Bobby right now.
I did it, and I'm in the room. I was like, I gotta reel him in. Here we go. Oh no. Oh boy.
I'm just loving the fact that right now, between the 7 of us, if my math is 8 of us, there's we've all have gained 7 more parts of our tribe. I'm so excited to be part of this conversation.
It's about networking. It's about understanding people who you wouldn't normally have access to. It's a lot. And I know we're on an hour and 7 minutes.
Oh, shocker.
But I assume no one else has anything else to do.
Booked and busy, honey. I'm booked and busy.
I mean, we could keep talking about porn, since some.
I know. Now, not to take it to the left, but
now who misses Tumblr out there? We all miss Tumblr.
Twitter is where it's at now.
Twitter's good. Okay, Twitter's good.
Twitter is lit.
Yeah, Twitter is good. You have to have a burner account with Twitter.
Yep, you got the burner account. I got the Minority Report account, my personal account, and the burner.
A lot of shuffling.
Yes, ma'am. But it's worth it.
Well, if we have time for one more question, I'm gonna do a weird one.
Okay.
And I'm really interested to hear what everyone else has to say about it. But what does hooking up look like in this environment for you?
Oh boy.
For me, it's exactly the same. And that it's consistent.
Yeah,
Trent, no, really.
I don't believe that 1 second.
Yeah, that's rude.
Somebody knocking on that door.
Down in the tenderloin.
It's coming
up.
up.
If I were hooking up with people, I wouldn't be drinking 32 ounces of margarita right now. But
I mean, it depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, sometimes you need this before it.
That's true. That's a true statement.
Yeah,
really true.
Anyone who wants to take it, go ahead.
I feel like lesbians are too cautious. They are hooking up.
You know what? That makes perfect sense.
Who's single, by the way? I mean, I'm not.
I'm somewhat. Depends on the day.
That's.
I've never had a boyfriend.
This is an interesting question for the group because it's really mixed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't really. Even before the pandemic, I don't hook up that often. I'm busy. Well, I was busy. I'm not busy anymore. And
I'm not busy.
Irony.
She's I'm counting my diamonds.
But now that I actually do have the time to invest in my personal life, I can't really have one. So it's strange. But I'm sexting a lot. And to be honest, even before this, I've always gotten off more on just attention than actually having to meet people.
Yes.
So not much has really changed.
Real. That is so real.
Did we lose Allie?
I think so.
Allie's I'm getting out of.
Allie's
She's hooking up right now. Yeah.
Right,
I don't know your question, but I'm about to go.
Cut it.
He said, "You guys are talking about sex. I'm getting ready to have some."
I know that's right.
She's gotta go build a shed out back.
Oh
kidding.
no!
Sorry.
Oh,
No, but no, Trina, I completely
Bobby.
like
I know, I'm just being a dick.
I
back to
just
that.
like get off on attention. Like I don't actually need the physical like interaction.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know
you
that
same.
James is
You
so
like me? Okay, great. I'm
egotistical.
gonna go home. Amazing.
Ain't gonna
It's
lie,
like-
physical attention does make a difference, though.
It kind of
Yeah.
No, it
it
does. And I
does.
usually like there's definitely a
sucks.
point in the year where I'm like, okay, I need it. You know, it's almost like I don't know, like the lunar cycle hits
Summer.
a certain point.
The lunar cycle.
No, it's usually in January. I don't want anyone near me in the hot summer. Like, no.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, so I guess not much has really changed for me. But I am sort of like, I guess I'm not surprised, but now like people that I've been like sexting are like, when are we doing this? When are we doing this? Like people have really like, people really do not realize that we're still in a pandemic.
No, not at
And
all.
I do
yeah.
find that part of it a bit alarming, honestly.
How about the people in relationships? Because I'm looking over here at Bobby.
I'm looking at you.
Well, it seems like it's decreased in frequency. Actually,
Bitch. Yes.
I don't know
Oh,
if it's.
God.
I don't know if we're just
Yes.
anxious. Yeah, like, are we
Yes.
anxious? We're anxious
Yes,
all the time.
pandemic.
There's never a separation.
Because
It's
people
like,
are
we're
always
there.
commenting like, "Oh, you're having
Yeah.
more sex, aren't you? Oh, well, you're
No.
already booed up, and like now you can just do it whenever."
No,
I'm
we're
like,
ordering Uber Eats and
no,
drinking too much alcohol.
Uber Eats, no.
I've had
Right.
more sex with this than I. Oh wait,
Yes.
this. This.
Wow.
Than I had with my man.
So single or in a
It's
relationship,
true.
nobody's getting any right
No one's
now.
getting
That's
any
No
right
crazy.
now.
one in the world's getting any.
Insane.
Yeah, Trina, you're not missing a thing.
Nope, nothing's missing.
Okay, I'm glad to know.
You're
Although
probably
I
having
feel
more
like,
fun.
and I can't say that I've never like lived with a partner, but I would imagine that if I did, like, I always like I'm sort of amazed by people who live with their partners who are not having sex every night. Like that's
Correct.
sort of
It's a thing.
It
It's a
is.
thing.
a
Oh,
real
it's a
thing.
big thing.
It's a
but
thing.
no, I know that that's
And I feel like
usually
no one
normal.
tells you that. Like I feel like it's like
Right.
this
Yes.
taboo thing that like my parents never told me, my
Right.
friends never told me. Like
I feel
I'm like,
guilty.
how did we
all
not
the
know
time.
this?
I feel like everything that we've learned about like sex when you're married is like when the couple is like 50 years old, like or 60 years old, they're gray hair, they're sleeping in two separate beds, like Lucy and Kenzie. You know what I mean? But like nobody tells you about like this life.
I'm
Right.
tired.
Yep.
Serious.
So I have a question, and this is regardless of whether you're coupled or not.
We're going off script.
I mean,
Oh, sorry.
do you normally have more sex in the summer or the winter?
Summer.
She's like, that's why
Winter.
this prime
Makes a
running so hard.
Oh. I
Summer
feel-
for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, summer.
All summer. I only have sex in summer.
Oh.
Really?
So what are you
Yeah.
explaining this season? Like what's happening this
Really?
season?
This
for
is
you?
going to be a full calendar year of bride.
Shade, Bobby. That was shade.
I feel sassy.
How do you explain the no
Bobby,
sex this season?
I
Bobby,
feel
what
sassy
did you
tonight.
Bobby,
Bobby's drunk.
I was just asking what was happening this summer for you.
Wow.
And Bobby, what about you?
Right.
I'd say the fall.
What's
when
up,
it's
Bobby?
Over here
cooler.
listening this whole
Talk-
time.
He talks a big
as
talk,
bear,
but he's
like, it needs to be
asexual.
cooler because when it's too hot, it's too hot. I
Yeah.
can't like really get
Yeah.
in the mood. So like fall is a nice time, you know. That's
Fall. Wow.
Fall.
Seasonal
With the-
sex.
The
Okay.
leaves
Yeah.
falling in the
Leaves falling
background.
down. Just imagine yeah. Some pumpkin spice lattes, like
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
This is Paula Abdul's promise of a new day.
It's her nightmare. It's really what's happening.
That's funny.
What
I
about
don't
you,
know.
Melissa?
Maybe.
I mean, I'm all year round. Like
Oh.
there's no pressure.
Oh.
Yeah.
She's open for business.
Oh, 2 claps for Melissa.
This is not a seasonal shop.
Breaking hearts everywhere she goes.
Love that.
No.
What about you, Jim?
Oh, Jim. Oh no.
Jim.
I just feel like
You're in the same boat
neither.
as me.
I feel like I'm the same as Bobby. I always say, am I the same as you? Fall?
Well, relationships are hard, so like hooking
No,
up is
I think
weird.
honestly, like I've even had to talk to my partner about this, like real
Same.
talk. It's we get like anxious about not hooking up often enough, and if we're like satisfying our partners.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I don't know if it's the COVID, I don't know, but you know, we've had to have that talk of, hey, you need to let me know when you want me to be sexual, because right now I can go like a couple weeks and not feel the need to do anything.
Right.
So
It's
yeah.
weird right now. Literally.
It's true though.
It's
Like I feel the
it's
same
so
way.
odd. It's like, I'd rather just, you want to go to bed?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm tired. Like
Yeah.
let's go to bed. Let's watch like
Seriously.
I'll browse Twitter, but like,
Right? Yeah, I'll browse my burner account real quick.
Right. Oh, you're sleepy? Okay, night.
oh no.
Oh no.
I'm in trouble.
I have like 3 more questions that I want to ask.
Shoot.
Oh, do you?
Do you?
We
I
had
think
a very
part
interesting
two.
question that we had a hard time answering on our podcast, and I would
Okay.
like, Carell, you think I should
Yeah.
pose it?
Pose it.
Which one?
As
Do
the
it.
moderator of this round table, I demand you pose it.
Oh, shit.
We do this segment called Ask Your Aunties, and people submit their questions to us, and we answer them on the podcast. And we got this one question that said, how do you define the difference between being a freak and being nasty when it comes to sex?
Oh
Oh
my.
my God, I don't know.
Yeah, yes.
I
Oh,
feel
wow.
like,
I've had a
okay,
hard time.
in my opinion, I feel like I feel like being nasty is more like
Say nasty again for me, please.
Nasty.
Nasty.
Yeah, that's freaky right there. That's freaky right there.
That's freaky, yeah.
Meow meow.
I feel like being nasty is more like getting into things that are more traditional, but like are traditionally known as being taboo. Being a freak is like introducing things that are like,
Okay.
Oh,
I want to do that. Like that's a freak.
Oh.
Nasty is like, oh, like you do this. Most people know about that, but like not many people do it. A freak is like introducing shit.
So like you kind of pee on the person, but you don't do a full
Like,
blown shower.
you kind of bleed on them. It's like whatever.
Bullshit
Kind
flag.
of pee on the person.
Yeah, just a little bit, a sprinkle.
Just to see how it feels. Just to see how
Yeah.
it feels.
No, that would be a freak. Being nasty would be like, I'm gonna go on dump on you.
Like pee
Not-
all over.
Okay.
Just
Oh
took a
no.
third here.
Wow.
I
there we
wasn't
have it.
ready.
Introducing stuff. It's like, here's something that I've thought of that's a fantasy of mine, but like not many people have thought about it. That's
Okay.
a freak.
I like that.
I have a question
Oh no, Bobby has a
Oh,
question.
There you go.
Someone
about
mute.
lesbians. I'm really
We didn't
intrigued by
unbutton the
lesbians.
top button now. It's all games.
Bobby, you're muted.
Girl.
The most
You
important part.
muted me.
Guys, I'm in the same room as him. It's
Yeah,
miserable.
the host muted me. I'm just curious about like tops and bottoms with lesbians. Like, is there a defined role within the lesbian community,
So-
or?
That's actually a great question. I'm sorry I muted.
Thank you. Don't
Because-
mute me.
There's like a massive debate about this. It seems like it's more of like the 20-somethings that have distinguished this like top and bottom thing with lesbians, whereas like older lesbians are like, that's not a thing. Like each person does their thing, and yeah, both parties leave satisfied.
Right.
Yeah.
There is like, I will 100%, yeah, there's the top energy, bottom energy. That's
Okay.
true.
Do you define that within your community? Like, you know who's the top energy versus who's the bottom energy?
Totally. Yeah.
Melissa, I think what would help us out is knowing what you are.
Yes, exactly.
What do you think?
I think you're verse.
You strike
Top.
you strike me as a top. You
Top.
strike me as a girl who takes charge. You know that she won. She's not fucking around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody being polite. I'm like, she's verse.
I watched the season premiere of The Chi season 3, their first episode, and there was this beautiful lesbian couple, and one was very like masculine presenting, the other one's very female presenting, and they got married and they showed their sex scene on the honeymoon, and I was just like,
Oh my.
oh, I was sweating bullets.
Ooh,
Honey.
okay.
Really,
Right?
delicious.
Right.
You know how to get it done. That's right. So
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so those responsibilities and roles exist in the lesbian community.
yes, but so that's interesting because one thing I've had to like kind of release from my life was the expectation that my partner's going to do like masculine things for me, like take out the garbage. And I've had to realize like, no, like we've got to like 50-50 this. So it's a lot more of like working together. Whereas I used to like let my husband just take over with like things that I didn't want to do.
Right. Wow.
Right.
That's actually crazy to think about.
Okay, can we go back to the freaking and nasty conversation?
Oh, yeah, okay, the freaking and nasty.
Just kidding.
Freaking and nasty. Who's next on freaking nasty? Are people okay with this podcast being like fucking 8 hours long or what?
Well, we can edit it. Yeah.
Every once in a while, ours hits about 2 hours. So,
especially in COVID life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who's next on freak versus nasty roles?
yes.
Dewan, it sounds like you're doing-
Trana, I need to hear from Trana.
I want video.
Tran. Yeah.
Trana.
I agree with
Trana.
Anthony. I agree with Anthony. Although honestly, before this question, I really never thought about the difference. I think I just
Me
always
either.
sort of use those terms interchangeably. But after Anthony's answer, I can see that there's a difference for sure.
It's
What is-
interesting.
I'm big on the freak versus nasty discourse in America.
So what is the freakiest thing that you've ever done sexually?
See, this is Dewan's getting it all out of y'all.
Sorry,
This is what
but
we do
she's
every week.
already had it.
I mean,
ready.
See, I'm big on the theory. I'm not really.
Yeah,
big on
me too.
practice.
That's what I always say. I always say that I'm
don't
like
believe it.
a slut in theory, not in practice.
Theory, in theory.
I believe there's been some toe sucking going on. There have been some nipple clamping. There has been some butthole clenching.
Oh.
Something going on.
I
that
mean-
you guys are not willing to spill the tea.
I'll
Okay,
spill
fine.
some
I
shit.
already told Bobby and Jim this, but the most like
Oh, this is
I've
hot.
done
Oh.
was I like
Bobby.
okay, you ruined it, Bobby. You ruined it.
Sorry.
He said it was hot. He said it was
No,
hot.
he's
I know, but
turned
it's
on
not
right
hot.
now.
It's shame. I know,
I'm not that turned
Bobby,
on.
Bobby, go on mute and put your video off. Like,
Go on mute, Bobby.
no, I'm just kidding. No, the freakiest thing that I think I've ever done was like hook up with someone orally on both their organs, like on stage in a bar in New York.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
it's, like in front of everyone, everyone's watching, and like it's not typical, but like it just felt.
Are you in New York?
Yeah, I'm in Manhattan.
Well, then.
Yeah.
I mean, not for that connection.
Right, Dewan said, I'm in Harlem. Let's
Pretty
go.
rookie.
I'll meet you on stage or what? Like, is
You
it-
said,
Right.
you said it's been a while.
Wait, were people clapping or booing?
oh no, people loved it.
Okay, just making sure.
Honey.
I honestly wouldn't know what the reaction was. I was obviously blackout.
You were just in it.
I wouldn't have just
Did it.
like on a whim been like, yeah, I'll like suck your dick on stage. But like it was very much a
Oh, I thought you were gonna tell me the camera one.
oh no, Bobby, go on
Oh,
mute.
sorry.
Bill the titty. Bobby's over here, the bone collector.
I know.
I thought that was
right?
the one you were gonna say was your. I mean, I think you can tell that one.
Oh no. He's got to put his hair up for this one.
To put the ponytail up for that.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know.
Okay, whatever. So
I got a
my
question for
freak
everyone then.
okay.
Oh, go ahead, Bobby. No, I
Oh.
want to hear it. I want to
Well,
hear it.
this one time, like there was this. I mean, I was probably what 28, and the guy was like 23. He lived down on campus. We live in Columbus, so like there's a college here that's pretty big. His fantasy was to roll around in like mud. So instead of mud, though, it was winter. So he decided that Nutella and chocolate icing was the thing to do.
Okay.
Okay.
So what we did was we took a tarp and put it in the kitchen.
Oh my
I'm
god.
sorry. Put it in the kitchen.
Wait, what?
This is
Yes.
freak nasty. This
is
both.
freak fucking nasty.
Freak
Look
nasty.
at it.
And we rolled around in fucking chocolate and like made out. There was nothing like there was no penetration, which is interesting looking back.
Not about that.
But it was very like body to body, skin to skin, very like
In chocolate.
Talking
in chocolate.
In chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my freak nasty moment of the night.
Was it like Hershey's syrup? Was it like
It was like the
hard
Kroger brand, honey. They were like
Right,
10
he
for
said
10.
it was buy one get one. Honey.
Yeah, it was 10 for 10. There was no way that it was like good shit.
So you just
Brought like two things of
poured-
Nutella, and then the
You
rest
like
was like.
poured some like chocolate syrup on the ground. You threw him down.
No, it was a
Nutella's
lot.
expensive.
It was a
That's
lot.
what I
of shit.
said.
That's what it is.
That's what I said. Yeah, why would you
Nutella? You
Why
wasting
would you
your
waste that to
Nutella
roll
shit.
around with?
go get some dirt and
I
water?
didn't pay
you'll be
for it. I was
fine.
like, you can do it, little boy. Like, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But I'll roll around with you, and I'll provide the home.
Ow.
Well, there you
Okay,
go.
I think that moves into freak territory for sure.
Yeah, sorry, but it's true.
Oh,
I think that
boy.
counts as freak. Who else? Trana.
Yeah, there's got to be something
Yeah.
worse.
Trana, give me your freak. Come on.
Trana.
No,
Trana.
Got some
no
story.
way.
I'm done with you not telling me your freak. I'm done with you.
He's holding back.
Maybe
Just one time.
maybe part 2.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
So
ready.
part 2 next week. Thank you.
Smart. Well, it's part 2.
But honestly,
It is an hour.
haven't
It is
really done
90
anything
minutes.
That
into the
crazy.
Yeah,
we got it.
we got to cut.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
there's
we
like,
don't, but it's 90 minutes. So
How long
this-
you
Okay, yeah, okay, we're done here.
This
All right,
has been
thank
so
you, everyone.
fun.
This was a blast.
This was
It really
Yeah.
was. We should do it again, honestly. We should do
Together.
part
For
2.
sure. Yeah.
Um,
I'm hot.
Okay, we can all leave, but we'll do it again. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
really
for sure.
Thank you everyone for coming
I'm
and sharing your.
sweating.
I'm so in.
And next time I'm in Atlanta,
Thank
I'm
you for
hitting you guys
sharing that
up.
you're in. I don't really care about who's sweating, but
Oh,
we'll
fuck, this room is
talk.
hot.
We'll talk next round. Okay.
sounds
Okay.
good.
Look for a timeline from me.
So,
Thank you for pulling this together.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
It was
really
Bobby's idea. He just made
It
me.
was my idea, but he took the whole reins. He was like, okay,
Oh,
let me get a...
Bobby.
All right. Yes, teamwork.
Bobby.
I'm for it.
All right,
Next
guys.
time, someone else can organize it. Thank you. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. It's been really amazing to be able to meet people that have great ideals and thoughts. All right. Thank you. Have a good week. Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of She's Not Doing So Well. Leave a message with questions or comments at 669-207-4643. Don't forget to subscribe and check out our links in the podcast description of this episode. Views, information, or opinions expressed during She's Not Doing So Well podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. This has been a House of Breck production.